Good Shabbos, everyone. Last Friday was one of the best days of my life. Right up there with my wedding and the birth of my children. Last Friday, we found out that our oldest son, Joshua, was admitted to the University of Texas at Austin. I knew this was a bat mitzvah that I could announce that at. We've been celebrating ever since. And as a proud UT alum, I can't wait for our son Joshua to go to school in Austin. It'll give me the perfect excuse to visit the city and the campus that I love. Now I just need them to move the football games to Sundays. Wish me luck. But as excited as I am, I couldn't help but think that beginning next year, my son Joshua is going to experience something that he's never seen before. For the first time in his life, he's going to experience fierce, anti-Israel propaganda. Joshua attended our Beth Yeshurun day school. He's been at Emory Wiener ever since. He's had Israelis as teachers, learned about the history of Zionism, and participated in our Federation's Israel Advocacy Program. He's been blessed to go to Israel 4 times, and will be going again this spring with his senior class. While he may be knowledgeable and passionate about Israel now, he's never been around people who are passionately opposed to even the existence of a Jewish state. But now, like every other Jewish college student in America, he will be. I hope he's ready for what he's about to experience. But to be honest with you, I'm nervous. Because in 2018, being Jewish on campus is no longer about studying and having fun. Our children are now on the front lines of an organized war against Israel. They'll attend universities that have become the focal point of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, the global effort to delegitimize and destroy the state of Israel, also known as BDS. BDS groups lobby student governments to divest from Israel companies. They protest against university boards that refuse to boycott Israeli schools. They create a campus of hate, of anti-Israel sentiment on many universities that our own children will attend throughout North America. And they do this all under the guise of freedom for Palestinians while they call for the destruction of the only Jewish state the world has ever known. It's been said that Israel's fate will not just be determined on the country's southern and northern borders, but also on the quads of North American campuses. The disgraceful, yet sophisticated and well-oiled offensive by the BDS movement, in many ways, is a strategic threat to the state of Israel. But it's also affecting our future American Jewish support for Israel. BDS advocates assert that Israel is dangerous, and that by extension, they go out and say it on campuses that Jewish students are also dangerous. And so they shame Jewish students for wanting to protect the Jewish state. They shame Jewish collegians and accuse them of cooperating with evil. Of course, these anti-Israel organizations, they never tell the full story. For them, it's entirely Israel's fault. They blame settlements, Netanyahu and the current Israeli government, Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. And in reality, they just blame Israel for being there. But they don't share with college students, Jewish and non-Jewish, is the ongoing Palestinian rejection of Israel. Because, of course, many of us know that the reality is that for decades, the Palestinians have continuously rejected offers for peace. Going back to the 1940s, again and again and again, they've refused to take anything short of all the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, thus eliminating any Jewish presence. Today, the Palestinian Authority that controls the West Bank refuses to negotiate with Israel. And instead, they continue to teach their people that we as Jews have no real connection to the land, ignoring thousands of years of Jewish history. Even in our Torah portion today, Jacob brings his family down to Egypt for food. But before he goes, as we read this morning, Jacob needs God's reassurance that he will eventually bring his family back to the land of Israel. Think about that. Jacob's going to save his family. There's a famine in the land. But before he even leaves, he needs God's reassurance that eventually, again, there will be a Jewish presence in the land. And the same has been ever since. We as a people, going back to the first time in the Torah, to Abraham and Sarah, we have that connection. There's always been a Jewish presence in the land. We've always been connected to that small sliver of land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The land of Israel is a timeless and inseparable part of our people's history. Yet the so-called moderate Palestinian Authority refuses to acknowledge that bond with the land. Instead, the PA spreads lies to its own people. They teach in their schools, thus raising another generation of Palestinians to not believe that there's any connection at all between the Jewish people and that land. Hamas, who controls the Gaza Strip, also spreads lies to their people about our relationship to the land. But at least they don't pretend to want to make peace. They go right out and say they want to kill Jews and destroy Israel. Give them credit. At least Hamas is honest. Of course, those who oppose Israel don't share any of these facts on our college campuses. Instead, to them and to the lies they spread, only Israel is to blame for the lack of peace. And unfortunately, those lies about Israel seem to be working, even with Jewish students. After hearing the falsehoods again and again on their college campuses, some of our own children can be easily tricked into believing that only Israel is at fault. So some of our own college students are choosing to just walk away, to not get involved at all. A recent Brandeis University study found that 20% of Jews between 18 and 29 don't feel at all connected to Israel. Compare that to 13% of Jews between 45 and 59, and just 7% of those above 60. Of course, this suggests a declining connection. We're losing too many of our children every single year. In another very frightening survey, 63% of Jewish college students and young adults said Israel, it's not important to their Jewish identity. Hillel rabbis often complain that the biggest challenges they have in the fight against BDS is the apathy amongst Jewish students and Jewish faculty who just don't even show up to fight. And not only are some choosing to walk away, the lies against Israel have become so effective that some of our own students are actually choosing to come out against Israel. In 2006, before BDS began, just 9% of American young adults sided with the Palestinians. A decade later, in 2016, 27% of American young adults, including too many Jewish ones, sided with the Palestinians. So it should be of no surprise that we now have several anti-Israel groups actually led by Jewish college students. In the past 4.5 years, the Jewish-led group, If Not Now, has become, unfortunately, a force on American campuses. It's poised even to overshadow the more established, very anti-Israel student group, the Jewish Voices for Peace. If Not Now employs tactics like hosting anti-occupation seders. They train Jewish camp counselors to brainwash their campers at Jewish camps that Israel commits crimes. They stage media events of birthright students walking off their trips to join anti-Israel groups. They even try to intercept birthright Israel travelers to warn them of the evils of the country they're about to visit. Did you ever think you would see the day when Jewish students were trying to stop other Jewish students from visiting the Jewish homeland? My friends, what we see happening today on college campuses in Texas and, of course, throughout the country should give us concern. There's a crisis happening in our college campuses today, and it's growing every single day. It should make us ask ourselves, how have the BDS supporters and their ilk become so successful in both turning off our students to Israel and even attracting some of our own to their cause? How? We raise our children on tikkun olam, social justice, and the idea that the word mitzvah means good deed. We teach them to see the suffering of others and act with compassion because those most in need were often our people just a few generations ago. We teach them that their Judaism demands they fight for justice, that their Judaism means they fight for equality, that their Judaism means they fight for a more peaceful and equitable world. We're not wrong to teach those values. They're not liberal values, and they're not conservative values. They're Jewish values. But in this day and age, our own children are struggling to see those values in the Israel they hear about on campus and they read about on Facebook and social media. They're naturally full of questions. They ask, why does their campus continuously erupt with events like Israel Apartheid Week that paint Israel as an oppressor? They ask, why does some of their own professors tell them that Israel is persecuting innocent Palestinians? With our own children left confused about Israel, often for the very first time, BDS and their supporters lurk, willing and waiting to scoop up our own college students. They know how to strike perfectly at the tension between the lack of a strong Jewish identity of too many young American Jews on the one hand and the distorted image of Israel as an unjust oppressor and occupier on the other. They strike right at that balance. And you almost can't blame some of our students. If they've never been taught the truth about Israel's complicated history with their Arab neighbors, if they've never been told that the land of Israel is at the core of what it means to be Jewish, if they've never ever been brought to Israel, seen their parents go to Israel, or even seen their own parents care about the Jewish state, then of course, too many of our own Jewish students are either going to walk away or join forces with the BDS movement they may perceive on their college campus as just and moral. You almost cannot blame them. The Passover Haggadah speaks of 4 questioning children, Keneged Arba Badim Dibrat Torah, the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one that doesn't even know how to ask. We don't want our children to become adults who are wicked, overly rebellious. We don't want them to become simple or people that don't even bother to ask. We want our children to become wise, astute, and discerning young adults. We want them to become adults who ask questions. To ask is what it means to be free and to be Jewish. But how we answer their important questions on Israel has never been more important, because we can no longer depend on many of their college professors to provide the correct answers. Or we know now that often the case, they won't find the right answers on the quads of their college campuses, not in this day and age of BDS. What can parents, what can grandparents, what can we all do to make sure that our college students receive fair, honest, and Jewish answers to their questions about Israel? What can we do? Of course, the best thing we can do now is to educate our children, teach them the facts, explain to them now that Israel is far from perfect, but still a very righteous country that we can take pride in, that's doing the best it can, surrounded by enemies that still seek to destroy her. All the studies show an obvious fact. There's a significant rise in an ongoing relationship with Israel for those who have been meaningfully engaged as teens prior to going to college. can we work even more to teach our children to love Israel? And can we go out and say it to our children, to be honest with them, to mean it when we say that to be Jewish is to be a Zionist? And if you're no longer a Zionist when you get older, you're really not practicing Judaism. Can we make sure we say that to our children with pride and with the facts at hand, with the history? You can criticize Israeli government. We as Americans often criticize our own government no matter who's in charge. But there's a difference between criticizing the government on one hand and actually calling right out for the elimination and the destruction of a Jewish state. We must intervene early, before they arrive on campus, and confront the Israel apartheid weeks. And number two, can we work to make sure that there are proper resources available to them when they go off to college? Now that I know my son, thank God, is going to UT, I wanted to find out what's available in Austin for my son and many of our own here at Beth Yeshurun. So I reached out to Maya Yaron, the current executive director of the campus Hillel. I love what she told me that they're doing to help. She told me that Hillel actively guides students on how to find their own voice, to speak up, write articles and letters, engage in positive discussion on Israel. In addition, our Hillel works to inspire students to find a connection with Israel, to nurture a lifelong relationship with the Jewish state that encourages grappling with the tough issues, but always doing so from a place of love. They also educate our students about the lines between free speech, that legitimate criticism of Israel's policies that are part of free debate and discussion, and when those lines are blurred into hate speech. And when it does, Hillel is there to advocate for Jewish students and ensure that the bias is called out on campus. Through their work, they have helped create a very strong pro-Israel community in Israel that is committed to educating our young. Every year, for example, Hillel hosts an annual Israel block party in the middle of campus. Students work throughout the year to plan the event. They involve all students, fraternities, sororities, all those involved on campus, Chabad, whoever they can. And the Israel block party usually sees over 2,000 students. Thank God Hillel will be there for my son when he goes off to UT next year. A strong Hillel makes a huge difference. And of course, there are other great organizations like Hillel out there that are making a difference today on college campuses. APAC, ADL, Stand With Us are just a few of the many others who are providing the right answers our students need. For those of us who care about the Jewish future, can we all commit to support at least one of these key organizations? I hope we can, because they're doing the best they can, but they always need the help. Now I know I will do even more to help those college campus organizations. Therefore, ensuring children like mine and so many of yours that they'll have the proper resources they will need when they go off to college one day. The support has never been more important. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.